can't explain how increasing taxes on everyone makes it cheaper or makes it easier or levels the playing field for first home buyers. That's the bit
Yeah.
that I'm struggling with. And, as a registered tax agent, as someone who only does tax inside and out every single day, it just doesn't, that part is what I'm losing here and not understanding. So in the comment section, happy for you to tell me what I'm misunderstanding here, because Julie, you told me
Yeah.
something earlier before. You told me the number of dwellings that they
Uh-huh.
forecast not to build now because of these tax changes.
Yeah. Brother, look, it's funny, right? Because you shift one thing, move another. Um, as everybody knows, we are chronically behind the number of houses that we're supposed to have had. Now, my business is sourcing properties for people. Now, 90% of my business, we source new properties for people. We believe in new properties. We believe in creating value from the ground up, paying stamp duty only on the land and have creation of equity while the houses come off the ground. That's been our belief system for a long time. We do existing properties, when that is the requirement of the client. We can source properties all over Australia. However, I just imagine already the mini impact we had in ramping up to the budget is over the last month or so, the amount of people saying, let's wait to see what happens.
Yeah.
It was significant. And it's amazing how people don't have all the facts to be able to make long-term decisions. And the government comes along and says, we will break the promises we made you guys.
Yeah.
When we go into the government, you'll be able to plan your life, and yeah, you can count on these things. And I think the media yesterday was having having a showdown with how many times the prime minister and the treasurer were asked if they would change this, and they said no, 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 and here we are, and the positioning of all of that also 2 years out of the next federal election. But Gary, do you mind if I just quickly in this live right now go somewhere that is slightly political, and then we come back to wealth creation.
Let's
It's
do it.
slightly political, but it has all to do with how people position themselves.
Okay.
Look, the idea of you making money, the way I feel about this budget is like this. You should make money only out of your labor, out of the work you do. We want to equalize, get this, we want to equalize, all right, the system so that if you make a lot of money out of being an entrepreneur, out of being an investor, creating value, well, you will pay dearly for that. You'll pay dearly for that. That's how I feel now. If you make dollars per hour, well, now it comes a deeper conversation. We are a very young nation. I think some people want to have safety of a job and get a job. Nothing wrong with that. Those very people should be fully financially intelligent and be able to invest and have
Correct.
money come to them through labor and return on that money, right? So when they say, hey, we're going to charge you capital gains tax, we're going to take away inflation and capital gains tax on top of that, that is almost like prosperity for you. Not sure. Just be glad that you're in Australia. I don't think that people, young people, old people, 30-year-olds will be encouraged by this conversation. But I don't think either that people are thinking in those terms, right?
I think
Yeah.
I think it's going to be challenging. So both you and I, we do a lot of investments, and I'm kind of thinking about it at the moment, going, well, there's certain asset classes that I'm going to struggle now to invest in because it's not worth the risk reward, and the tax component's not worth it. So,
Yeah.
I did the maths earlier, and I was thinking about this going, first home buyer, 21-year-old, if they put away $10,000 per year for 8 years, and they put it into an index, and they built that up so that they could buy a property, buy a first home. But they put, 10,000 a year away for 8 years, compounded at 10% per year, which would result in $130,000 worth of an asset. It's gone up by 50,000 over that 8-year period. Win-win.
Uh-huh.
But then you're going to get taxed at 39%. And the
Yeah.
problem here is you're going to pay a lot of tax. You'll end up with about 100 grand left over. So 100 grand to use as a deposit. But to have that 100 grand left over after 8 years, you'll have paid income tax, and then you will have paid capital gains or income tax on the capital gains. And you will have paid over $50,000 worth of tax
Yeah.
to have 100 grand savings.
That's thank you for the example. That's exactly my point. If I am diligent with my money and I want to invest, even to save for a deposit on my house, I'm now going to have to pay capital gains tax, right? I think, right? Now, I want to say this as well. Look, I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't really care if the government is from the left or from the right, from the middle, from behind. I don't care. I don't really care. I really am a believer that the economy is inside of the individual, right? We understand the rules, we play within the rules, and we create value. That's where I stand, right? But when we are not meant to wait for the next government to come in and try to fix the situation. We ought to challenge the current government on how does the Australian prosper. So there's a lot of shallow spin. This is an intergenerational fairness. Now explain to me, like with what Gary just said.
Yeah.
If you're in your 20s and you buckle up and you say, you know what, I'm going to save 10 grand a year towards my house.
Yep.
Or if you're already a couple, save 20 grand towards a year. Well, if you put it in the bank, well, you're not really going to be saving a lot of money because the inflation factor. But let's just say you put it into an indexed fund, right? And then the government says, well, when you sell it for the deposit of your house, we're going to hit you hard. How's that helping young people?
It's crazy,
right?
And that's the bit that I'm struggling with at the moment, because I think about my journey when I first bought my first property. I first started investing in shares. I built up a share portfolio. I then sold the share portfolio to buy my first investment property, and that's how I did it. And I paid.
Me too.
I can't remember. I paid my taxes. I can't remember what it was. But now I think about it, going, I would have had to pay double under the new rules. I would have paid double the amount of tax. And therefore, me buying that first property would have been another 1 year, 2 years. I don't know. It would have been a lot longer. And that's what's challenging here as a analytical person. Both you and I are analytical people, and I read all these comments that are emotionally driven comments, and I'm like, but how does the budget help us? But let's go into. This is the biggest tax reform that I've seen as an adult in the profession, which is really disappointing because I'm not pro this tax reform. But even like the negative gearing. So Julio, we've been doing properties for years. You have a great portfolio, I have a great portfolio. We normally help a wide range of people. But what about a doctor now? So say if we were to, if we're looking at a doctor makes $400,000 a year, what do you think we could do with the strategy moving forward?
So the thing is, for me, in my game, as I said before, Medigro really focuses on doctors, right? And I think the average person in the population do not understand or respect the fact that it takes a long time for a doctor to actually start earning. And then by the time they come out, yes, they will make good money later. But it is, when I addressed Parliament in New South Wales, I said, doctors should not pay tax. And people looked at me like, what? Every single time a doctor goes to work, he's putting the economy back on. So if he makes John whole and John goes back to work, John is a piece of the economy. He's a part of the economy. Well, it's not John, it's his kids. It doesn't matter. Every single time a doctor goes to work and people get better, I believe they're the front line of the economy. So I'm already starting with the idea that doctors should not pay tax. And that's become one of my drives in my conversation inside of Medigro, right? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to minimize the tax through legal systems and investing. So thank God that we live in an island where our demand for houses are much greater than the supply. And the government knows this. So when somebody comes in and says, I'm going to buy a brand new house and everything stays the same, so negative gearing stays the same, and the reality that inflation is going to go through the roof. Inflation in Australia, and I think the Premier signaled that a month, the Premier of Queensland, the Premier of Victoria signaled that, the Treasurer signaled that, and then also the Prime Minister signaled that, all in the last 45 days, that inflation in Australia may go 6, even 7%, which means that interest rates will go up as well. Talking about the doctor on a $400,000. Yep. If that doctor understands that whatever you buy tonight is a discount tomorrow, that inflation alone will compound at 6% per annum, whatever you buy tonight is at already a discount tomorrow. The government needs to provide houses to the population. So what they're doing is every single house that a person invests, right? And that's where I think some of the other politicians don't get it. Every single house that a person invests upon, right? It's one less house the government has to provide to the population. So it puts in the hand of the investor says, okay, this is good. Depreciation is actually a very fair way to do it because the rent is not going to pay for all the expenses of carrying that house. So I think the government is already doing a beautiful thing to the renter, to the tenant, by subsidizing the landlord. They're saying, we'll give you some money, and that way the rent does not have to go fast, as high as it would go if that support wasn't there. Most people do not see it 360 degrees. So going further with the doctor, just conclude this last point, going further with the doctor, the truth for me is this, and most people don't get this, is a wealthy nation needs wealthy individuals. Because if a doctor has financial freedom, what happens is this, most people don't realize, they see the big income the doctors have, but they don't realize that some doctors work 6 days a week. They work 7 days a week. If they were a sport, they would be marathon runners. Like they work really, really hard, they run, right? If we can provide for the doctors, right, a financial support and financial freedom, right? What happens is that they can actually relax and know everything's being taken care of, and start to then engage with all the innovation that is coming upon us, rather than being reactive to have that to deal with their own financial dilemmas. Anyway.
So what we can do with doctors and with everyone actually, but you know, the government has changed the rules, or is looking to change the rules around negative gearing on properties. But I've always, I don't know, for the last 11 years, that you know, I've always bought properties. I've always been the builder. I've always been the developer. That's how I've made a lot of money. I buy the land and I do the build, and that's what I do as my investment strategy. And in that case, those properties would still be negatively geared and would still be able to claim negative gearing on those properties. So new residentials is fine. Julie, you did touch on something that I thought I might elaborate on a little bit. The government's turned around and they said the Treasury has done their own modelling, which is going to reduce the housing supply by 35,000 over the next decade by bringing these taxes. While they reckon that they're going to help housing supply by 75,000 by investing money into infrastructure. And again, as someone that does land development, I call absolutely a lot of bullshit that we don't, people that do land development don't not do the land development because we've got to pay 20 grand per lot in infrastructure costs. We still do it. It's irrelevant. The reason why we don't do land development is because it takes 4 years, 5 years for the council to sign off on it and get a project from where it is today as a farmland.
That is.
Yeah, it's crazy. But get this, and this is what people have probably forgotten, and I might comment a little bit in the chat box. But you know, if you look at the migration, so Julia touched on it earlier. You know, we have migration. We're going to have lots of migration. Migration is good for Australia. First generation Australians, you know, generally provide more economic value to Australia than third generation Australians do. So take that as you will. And with that in mind, you've got 1.3 million people are forecasted to call Australia home in the next 5 years. The downside with that number is And anyone can do the math. So on average, 243,000 people are, with the forward estimates per year, expected to call Australia home. We will, per the estimates, we're going to only build between 150 and 170,000 dwellings.
It is.
And, 10 years ago, we're building 220,000 dwellings per year.
What is going on? What is going on?
So we're blaming.
I don't want to interject. I just want to put in your mind and other people's minds that if we're to be honest, on every $100 spent in a house in Australia, between $36 and $40 is tax.
Yeah.
Local tax, state tax, and national tax, federal tax, right? What the heck is going on? Like, what's going on? Why do we get this level of, and I don't want to use the word dishonesty, but man, if you want to unlock the supply of houses, dude, just take away the bureaucracy, take away the nonsense, stop charging people so much, right?
Yep.
And but carry on, because I got a few other points to make about this.
So when we have, if you think about property, we think about the market, we know we can still do negative gearing on new residential properties, but if we think about just supply and demand, and just keep this really simple, it's like you have 1.3 million new migrants come into Australia. We only going to build over that next 5-year period. We're probably, and this is the government forward estimates that are always wrong, but we're going to build probably 800,000 dwellings. So we're going to build 800,000 dwellings. We're going to have 1.2, 1.3 new people call Australia home. Again, I just go back to it. There's a gap. There's a massive gap. Where are they going to live? And then this just goes back to really simply what will happen in the next 5 years is rents will increase, housing shortage will get even worse, and there'll be less. Until housing prices go up enough, there'll be less people wanting to invest because we've watched what a Labor government has done to put the fear into people of investing and making money. So if I make a bold prediction now, I'm pretty confident that rents are going to go up by between 5 and 20%. I think that the property market, if we only build 160,000 dwellings per year, I think the property market will continue to go up, which is crazy to consider, but people will not sell. So again, I got 22 properties.
People will not sell.
They won't sell.
I won't sell. I agree.
I'm not paying the tax.
Yeah.
So I'll wait until I die and someone else can pay the tax. And that's going to be the mentality of what majority of property investors is. We just won't sell. That's it.
I think, I think also that when we look at a nation, right? Look, man, I don't know if there is a playbook that's being played, right? I think every Argentinian living in Australia right now, and if they're older than 40s, than 45s, they'll be freaking out. You know why? Because what happened in Argentina, it's almost like step by step what's happening here. Yep. There gotta be a playbook at play, right? Some. I'm from Brazil. My parents are Europeans. I was born in Brazil, but there's so much deja vu going on, right? And the weirdest part about it all is, if we're to take a greater context, you're talking about another 1 million people coming to Australia, and because we'll have a situation where houses, as Australians, we may say, no, less people, but we're actually not seeing the bigger picture that if we don't have enough people come, we won't have an economy. We just don't make enough babies, right? As it is. And we are an expanding new nation, right? But
we need positive net migration, but we also need housing. We need policies that allow people to build houses and not have a decrease in the number of dwellings.
I think if the government of the day said something like, hey, listen, guys, we recognize what happened with the oil, and we acted accordingly. We took the taxes off petrol, right? They did that. Yep. Well, we're going to do the same with houses, okay? Well, for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years, we are going to halve the taxes at local, state, and federal levels. We're actually going to do it, right? What will happen there? And by the way, also, we're going to punish, the word is punish, fine, right? the councils, the entities that actually delay, right? They have a archaic system where it takes a year, as you said.
Yeah.
A council should not have the right to take a year to say yes or no, especially if they already have the protocols at play. It doesn't make any sense. And for us to have to deal and live under this much bureaucracy, it is intense. It is just insane. And this is why important is lives are important, because people can start get the fact that you and I, we live in the world where we create wealth for our clients. That's where we live. So we understand that, well, the rules are changing. We'll watch this. We'll just maneuver. We'll just maneuver
Correct.
around it, right?
And this,
But the
and this,
majority of people, they're struggling to feed their kids.
yeah, and this is what the challenging part is, that if you have a great network of professionals, of experts around you, you know, like we do, we talk and go backwards on tax structure, properties, investments, wealth creation all the time. And what's going to happen, and this actually happened in the office today. One of my colleagues, I won't mention their name to not get them in trouble, because they're not watching this live, so they will get in trouble tomorrow. But one of them said that what's going to happen is the gap between the rich will get bigger, and the gap between the poor will get widen, and the middle class will disappear, just like it's disappeared in the US, just like it's disappeared everywhere. And the reason, like, this is where I struggle, because before I said, the way that I bought my first investment property was I saved money, I bought investments like shares. It was all shares, I'm pretty sure. So shares, there was no crypto back then, or I didn't invest in crypto because I wasn't smart enough back then. But you know, it was shares, it was savings, and I built that up. I sold down my shares. I got a 50% discount on the sale of the shares. I put that money to buy a property. And now think about this: in July, two July, so 2 years. In July, the 50% discount is going to disappear, right? The problem with this is that you will end up paying 84% more tax on a sale of anything: property, shares, crypto, gold, silver, whatever you like investing in. Your tax is now gone up by 84%. And that's the maths. I do a video. The video will get sent out in the next couple of days. But 84% extra tax because you made a decision to risk your money to invest in something, even a business. I invested in Hatcher, started Hatcher. You know, I took the risk, and now.
So you see, this is the thing again. Now again, we're talking about, man. There are some slogans going around the planet, and the funny part is that I have clients from all over the world, right? And literally all over the world. And you know, Gary, that the saying, "You will own nothing, and you will be happy," is being translated to most languages. And this isn't that so? You're talking about, we want to give it a fair go for young people, and the way you're talking right now is, if you invested, you'll be punished. You ought to make money on an hourly rate. If you will make money in any other way, by being an entrepreneur, building your own business. Now, let's just take this further for another moment, because you see, if this is the case, then what happens is there will be only a few major companies, like super companies. Like there'll be companies like that will own everything, and everybody works for them. Right? Everybody are the peasants, and we ought to live our lives, and everything is rented. Everything is we sign a monthly agreement for everything, and we be happy. We get $300, we spend $298, but we have an okay life. What are you complaining about? Right?
That sounds like slavery.
And that is at the core of this budget. And there's no way to argue this differently if you do the sums, if you do the maths, right? It's just so back to your point. Guys, if you follow me for 30 years, I've been saying to you, the secret for getting ahead in life is, do you have capital or you do not? Do you have assets or you do not? Now, let me give you an encouragement. That won't go away. It doesn't matter what country you're from, what country you're going to. It doesn't matter. As a human condition, the way to prosper is to accumulate capital. End the story. Now, this government is coming in and having this conversation with us, and we're going to go along with that. But very soon, what Gary's saying what Gary is saying is to come out to play, which is rent will go through the roof. And if rent's going to the roof, you won't be able to save as much money as you would otherwise to buy your
Yes.
own house. And if you save the money into investments to then cash it in, that's when you lose a chunk of it. That is now putting us into that lock-in step. Now, that very conversation is what's going to get this government out of place. So it only takes a few moments, right, for people to start waking up. And then it comes other conversations in terms of, no. You cannot speak what you think. You cannot come true with your eloquence. Oh, well, it's called, freedom of speech. Let's interfere with that too. Now, do not be naive to imagine that those laws are already at play. Those laws are in the past. They're already at play. And this is why, if you follow me, if you watch Gary's conversations, people are going to get into trouble. We say, oh, we're going to get into trouble. Mate, I don't want anyone to get into trouble. I just want you to write, call, email, text your current politicians. That's why we voted for them, including the people that are in the government right now. If you were to give yourself a time to breathe, I would say to you, everyone in government right now, they're not evil. They just have belief systems, and they're following tracks that go with that belief system. And if that belief system really is at its core that you should live off your hourly rate, that's what's being put at play. If you think about the conversation really at its core, is that, what are you complaining about, mate? You're having a great life. Just pay your fair share. We're in this together. We're not, as a government, we're not going to be responsible for spending so much money. We don't know how to solve problems, so we're throwing more and more people at that. The biggest expense we have is the government itself. In order to be self-sustaining, we're just going to control you more and fine you more and more and more and more. It's going to be a point in which something is going to go sideways. Or not.
Well, we definitely
call your politician today. Sorry,
we've definitely seen that.
carried
Yeah,
away.
we've definitely seen that you can't tax your way into prosperity.
Yeah.
So you might see on Facebook, you see that I comment on my local members' page asking questions of how this actually benefits the next generation.
Yes.
And I do it because I don't
Yes.
mind getting, triggering people, but none of them can
Yes.
give me the answer. And even like, if we think about like family trusts, there's over 1 million family trusts in Australia. So, but family trusts are mostly used by everyday average people, everyday
Yes.
mum and dads. Again, I wouldn't mind if they want to take away something, being the family trust, and making us pay minimum 30% tax on distributions. I'm like, cool. But let me income split. If I'm your husband and wife, and my wife doesn't work at home, do what they do in America. Let me have family, taxable income, not whoever's stay at home has zero taxable income, the other person has taxable income and they work, and then you get penalized massively. But you're putting through, you're saving the economy on childcare or whatever it may be. So this whole changes, and this is what's really critical about the family trust bit, is that for the last 15 years, I've been telling everyone who will listen to me to set up a family trust, operate a business under the family trust, buy a property, most likely buy a property under family trust, subject to a few things. Now, again, this is about having the right people in your corner. Now I'm kind of going, okay, if the current federal government are going to screw us with family trust and they're going to make us have a minimum 30% tax on distributions, now I've got to think a bit more creative, right? And you Julia, you talked about it earlier. You said, are we going to be using more companies moving forward? And the answer is highly likely yes. So my gut says 95% chance that we'll be using companies a lot more because we don't have Div 7A issues, we don't have added complexities, we don't have the flexibility, which is a problem. As family trusts, we get major flexibility. But I think that the pros and cons between having a family trust and having a company and buying a property, for example, in the next 1, 2, 3 years, it's not going to the family trust may not make sense. Whereas people that already own properties under a family trust, own share portfolios, own businesses under a family trust, and that's based on the grandfathering rules, it makes sense. So I think you'll find that family trusts now will only become, and this is what pisses me off so much. I don't think people get this. I want, Julia, you know my story. I started Hatch with $14,000, right? So my family are not wealthy. Just because
Yeah.
I've made money in the last 10, 15 years now, doesn't mean that I've always been wealthy, right? I ate Vegemite and cheese sandwiches for most of my primary school and high school for lunch, right? But I want the next generation to become financially successful. I don't want
And you
these.
want the average Australian when
Yeah,
you were an average guy and now you're a wealthy guy.
yeah,
That's what you and I want. That's my story too. I came here with nothing. We
yeah.
want the average guy to be able to have a go. What they want
That's
to
it.
do, and
Yeah,
have a go and succeed at it. That's it.
that's it. Like
Yeah.
that's it. And this is where that family trust, like this, where husband wife, you've got husband goes out, runs a business, you distribute between the wife and the husband, you minimize your taxes that way. Those type of strategies are not going to be, might not be as possible in the future for the average person. But then I think about this for the high net worth individual clients that I've got. I'm like, they still exist. That's why I say that the gap between the rich and the poor will get wider, because even if the
Mm.
rich only save 2%, 3%, 5% taxes compared to doing what the average person can do, but they're compounding that over the next 20, 30 years on millions or tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars. So the gap gets wider and wider because the average person can't take the advantages,
Yeah.
or it doesn't make as much sense for them. And this
And,
is,
and what? Yeah.
yeah,
And unfortunately, what happens is that the people that are not getting richer blames the rich people,
yeah,
right? Where we have all this government meddling in the middle of it all, right? Like interfering, like we've been saying this till the cows come home. Guys, let me just challenge you for something, okay? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which side of the fence you are in or which party you voted for. I think what Gary mentioned a few moments ago, it's highly worth you do it. Just write to your politician. Just write to your
yeah,
politician. Whatever suburb you live in, right? Find who is responsible for your area, okay? And ask the questions. How does this budget, Fed income, show me the maths, helps young people to have a go? Show me how does it help people to start their own businesses?
yeah,
Like, just get the numbers, get the maths. Otherwise, it's always spin. It's basically this whole thing about waking up. It's about that. Waking up is about paying attention. Because when we're suffering too much pain, it's already hard. So we want to be like, man, a little depressed and entertained. We see so much of that happening. Like, how do I know that? Is because we know that one of the biggest dilemmas of our times is we have so much prosperity in general, and people are depressed. That people have never been more depressed than now. So there's so many people dealing with being more sad than what they should, right? What we should do is switch that sadness into, hope for the future, a brighter step. As I said before, a wealthy nation needs wealthy individuals. We ought to write to our politicians, ask the questions. Now, Gary, what I'd like to do for the sake of time
yeah,
is just to start hitting some points, okay?
yes.
Yes, guys, some of the rules changed, but some of the rules stayed the same. So let's make a distinction, okay? If you have a second hand or an existing property, if you bought an existing property or you're about to buy an existing property as an investment, you have a 1.5, 2 years window, right? You
Yeah.
gotta do your sums, you gotta do your conversations.
Got to
Now,
take action. We definitely
yeah,
have to take action.
gotta take action. Now, Gary and I already said that. We don't think there was gonna be a massive selling as of tomorrow. The government behaves in ways as if, we just started the country 6 months ago. Nah, 50% of the houses in Australia, get this, are already paid for. They are people's homes, and when the parents die, it's going to go as inheritance to the kids. And there is a trend in which some of the families just take the home over. They
Yep.
will rethink all of that. There's no need to panic. but you need to know your numbers. Okay. And this is what Gary's mission and my mission is all about, is showing people's numbers and strategies. And both of us, we provide education courses. We do talks exactly about that. Get to know your numbers. Now, if you have an income, get this, above 120,000 a year income, the whole idea about, listen, this is kind of, I'm going to say it. I wrote a book called The Third Path. I'll be doing this. Let's just say I'm just late 20s, early 30s. What would I do? And my income is above 120 grand. I would save the money. I would buy the property investment. I'll not buy my own home. I would buy a property investment and build my chain reaction. Properties that buy properties, properties that buy properties. And the way in which to really, really navigate this negative gearing situation is they already told you they're not going to take negative gearing away from new properties. Done. You're done. You're set. You'll be able to claim the bejesus out of that thing. Now, what about capital gains tax? Well, there's a way for you to never pay capital gains tax. And here it is. Don't sell.
Don't sell.
Just don't sell.
Simple.
Simple. And you understand now where we're going, both of us. You can hear the echo, right? Just don't sell. Don't sell. And there is a reality also that in the future, you'll be retired. And if you're retired, everything being equal as of tonight, you're in a pension phase. And if you're in a pension phase and you sell that property, your capital gains tax calculation will be a lot different than it would be if you're earning. Does it make sense? Again, come to our courses, come to our mathematics. Let me just make a couple of more points here, Gary, just before we go, right? You and I received a lot of questions today. Talking point number 3, and Gary already mentioned it, right? Capital gains tax. This is a tax hike. From July 2027, the 50% discount is gone. A minimum 30% tax on your real gain. So 83%, 84%, that's what Gary's talking about, of the discount went to the top 10% of earners. That is your bracket. You have 13 months to sell under the old rules. Don't waste them. Now, the majority of you, if you do your numbers, you will not have to sell. If you have income from a property and equity in that property, there are other strategies. For me and my family, we would like to stand in a situation where we don't sell. Selling is just a gun to the head situation. Is parents really sick and you need to pay for an emergency surgery. Something really shitty happens, then you have to sell. There's no other way. Divorce sometimes forces people to sell things. Otherwise, don't sell. What do you reckon?
And that's my point. So that's your opinion. That's my opinion too. And that'll be the opinion that I tell every single investor that I've got now moving forward. So if you think about that stranglehold from investors that own properties, they buy properties, they hold on to it for 10 years. There's going to be less available stock because of these rule changes, right?
Yes.
And that's where that's what I'm going about. One of the talking points that we've got was around, the family trust, right? So, if you're buying property, you hold on to it for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. We negatively gear property at the start. After 5 years, after 10 years, they become positively geared anyway. That's what people tend to forget, that they work themselves out over a period of time as inflation goes up. As your debt starts going down, they become less negative. But again, trust. So from July 2028, distributing trust income to lower income family members to save tax, gone, right? They're going to put a minimum 30% tax on all distributions. Gone. Now, at Hatcher, we've been talking internally about a couple of different strategies to get around that. So at some point I'll send out a video and advise everyone. But there is a 3-year restructuring window. There's also a small business concession regarding trust and how we do restructures anyway. So that's been around for ages. But again, we just got to start planning. So if you're one of Hatcher's clients, we'll have a think about this over the next couple of weeks and start reaching out to clients. If you're not, then just whether you reach out to Hatcher or not doesn't matter. But reach out to your advisor, the person that you trust, and just ask them, how does it impact how does these changes on the trust impact your personal
Yeah.
situation?
Yeah, I'll pick up on that. You and I were talking about that earlier as well. If you are in a discretionary trust, I'm reading my notes, okay? If you are in a discretionary trust, your most urgent decision isn't property, it's structure.
Structure.
The rollover relief to moving to a company or fixed trust without a tax event is a genuine opportunity. And that's what Gary's alluding to. But it needs to be planned now. Don't come in running in 2028, say, oh my God, I gotta do this now in the next 2 weeks, right?
And to add to this one, I haven't seen or heard any state government say that they will allow some type of exemption on land tax or stamp duty. So if you
Yeah.
have a property under a trust and you're thinking, oh, I'm going to roll it into a company and there'll be no income tax, there won't be
Yeah.
in theory, but
Yeah.
there will still be stamp duty. So it's not as simple as saying I got $1 million property, I'm going to move it from the trust into the company, and there may be no stamp duty. You have to get proper advice around this because you don't want a 50 grand bill that surprises you, and you just pay more tax on top of tax on top of tax, and you get very upset.
Yeah. Hey man, I have zero political aspirations. I have zero need or desire to be a politician, right? But I reckon, look, what we know about wealthy nations, what do we know about them? What they have is they have capacity to produce energy, and they have minerals, and it's people, the people in those countries. So we know a lot about the Middle East being like that before the war, and well, oil production nations that are not corrupt, okay? We know that the people from those nations benefit from the fact that they do export those commodities to the world, and they getting the tax, and the tax goes in to benefit the whole nation. Australia, as an island, has everything. We have coals, we have uranium, we have wind, we have gas,
we have everything.
We have oil. Now, we're 2 years away for the next election. If you're watching this and if you're hearing me, be present. Yeah. We should go walk into the next election with a formation of the following thoughts. And here we go. The war is going to sort itself out. It's going to bring an incredible amount of challenge to the planet again over the next 6 to 12 months. Well, we're there already, right? This is a moment where Australia right now is in a fine balancing act saying, hey, listen, we can't charge too much. We can't invoice too much in our taxes to our exports because our partners, get this, they're the one that processes the oil and give it back to us.
Correct.
So we actually lost our ability to produce our own energy. Be clear about that. We have the best coal on the planet, and we're shutting down our coal mines, shutting down our energy production. And that's been at play for a while. We have no real refineries in Australia, right? What? Yeah, man. We have to send our goods out, get somebody else to refine it for us to send it back. I'll tell you what, we've got a lot of sun, a lot of wind, and that's why people keep talking about renewables. Renewables are in its development still gonna take years to actually be cranked up to produce what the other sources produce. Now, as Australians, we are not to fight each other, but to unify in the reality that our island is one of the most blessed countries in the world when it comes to its capabilities of producing energy. And if you really look deep into things, it's actually not even about money. It is about energy. And we have governments now looking to a very small population, 26, 27 million people, and trying to tax the bejesus out of these people. Got it?
Correct.
Where they could actually set up international relationships right now. They could even be going towards force majeure, right? It's in a contract, a little clause that says, if things go to, I was going to say the S word, but if things go tough, right? Then we can call force majeure, saying something that is major. It's a force greater than myself. right? To actually renegotiate some stuff the whole planet understands. It's now a conversation about self-sustainability through energy. And we ought to call on a government that will prepare the path for us as a nation to be truly energetically efficient for the rest of our lives. That is the conversation. We ought to talk like that. That would create an incredible amount of jobs, an incredible amount of entrepreneurs. Imagine how much of the high-end people would bring to Australia if we were to reset and rethink of our system in preparing energy for the planet. We already, as a dry island, the center is all desert, we already produce so much food. We could be in a very privileged position within 20 years. Within 20 years, just like that, we could be in a very privileged position to actually help to supply the planet with energy that comes from the goods of Australia. And that is the point that I would like to kind of start going towards finishing the live tonight.
Yeah. And to touch on that, I think that, each of us have an opportunity to build wealth and to change our own future. We first got to, start saving money. We've got to be able to invest money. We've got to invest it in the right structure. So I understand that some of this stuff with the budget and stuff has changed the things of how the mechanism, the structures of how we do it. Maybe you call up Patra and we say, it's best for you to pump that 20K, 30K extra into your super per year. Maybe we say it's better to put it into a company now and invest under the company. Maybe we go out and say, hey, let's go buy another one property or two properties, negatively gear it under your personal name, or buy a positively geared property under a company. But I think in the world of supply and demand, and that's where I fundamentally live, I just go back to the basic numbers here of 1.2 million population growth over the next 5 years. We're only going to build circa 800,000 dwellings. House prices are going to go up. That's it. It's simple as that. I think rents are going to go up. I think house prices are going to go up. I'm reading one of your talking points, Julio, so I'm going to steal your hard work here. But government spending is at 26.8% of GDP, the highest share outside of COVID since the mid-1980s, which is insane. Our deficit...
It's insane.
A deficit isn't $31.5 billion.
Worth of debt is insane.
No, but it's going to be more. The budget lies. They do off... I don't understand this. How you have a budget and you say it's 31.5 billion in deficit, but then you have off-budget spending for another 93 billion. And I'm like, what do you mean off-budget? Am I allowed to do a balance sheet now and just not include shit on it? I'm like, okay, this is what happens when you have a treasurer that's not an accountant, financial background or anything. They just make up stuff. So what I say is my position would be is that house prices are going to go up, rents are going to go up. Structuring your investment rights is going to save you a lot of tax because the government is clearly penalizing people to invest. But we're still going to invest. We're still going to make money. Maybe it's just like Julia, what we said before. Maybe we just don't sell. We don't sell, we don't pay capital gains tax, stiff shit, and we keep accumulating and keep building.
Goes back to that circle you say, the rich gets richer, the poor get poorer. But Australia as a young nation, that does not need to be the case. And if you guys are watching this, you're talking to two people that came out of nowhere. People that came out at sheer hard work. And we know what hard work is in a hope and preparation for a future. And this is what our communication is all about, is helping others to realize how good Australia really is. And how Australia ought to be one of the leading countries in the world by its power, by its youth, by its possibility. And if we just give up the ghost now, it's not feasible. $1 trillion worth of debt should be a motivation for us as a nation to work together towards a very, very prosperous future, right? Guys, we've been hanging out now for an hour. Gary, do you have any final remarks?
No, that's all, Julio. So, I'm Gary Brown. Keep investing and take control of your financial future.
That's it. Guys, thank you so much for staying with us. We will talk to you soon. Have a great evening, and we'll see you in the next one.